Hi, this is Out of Crazy Town, your guide to divorcing a narcissist, and I am your host, Jackie Miller. I have an amazing guest today discussing an incredible topic. Nancy Forrester is the founder and executive director of the National EFT Training Institute. EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques, and Nancy is a pioneer in this cutting-edge field of energy psychology. Nancy walks us through her incredible story and how she ended up founding an institute to teach professionals how to treat unresolved trauma. I am certain you will enjoy this conversation as much as I did. All right, welcome back, everyone, to Out of Crazy Town, your guide to divorcing a narcissist. I have the amazing Nancy Forrester here with us today. Welcome, Nancy.
Oh, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. Really, really excited about our conversation coming up.
Oh, I can tell. I can feel your energy, which is so amazing. And I wanted to just give everyone a brief, quick, there's so much to talk about with you, with your background and your experience, but I want them to know that you are the founder and executive director of the National EFT Training Institute, and that is Emotional Freedom Techniques. You are a clinical psychotherapist, accredited certified master trainer of trainers at EFTI, and a pioneer in cutting edge fields of energy psychology. I love that term, and I want to talk about that more in a minute too. I wanted to tell you that when I first heard of you, it was when I was going through my certification as a high conflict divorce coach, and you did a lesson on being trauma-informed coach. It was so great to understand your ways of explaining how trauma is stored in our bodies, et cetera. And I wanted you to know what the other reason I really wanted you on today was I was in the middle of my divorce, completely in the fetal position, super anxiety, middle of the night, couldn't sleep. I think possibly I had a court hearing the next day.
Yeah.
And I was, people had mentioned, quote, tapping to me. And I was just desperate for any relief. And I started researching and I found some videos and I started to do it that night. And then I did it on the drive on the way to the courthouse. And I was like, dang, this stuff works.
I was pretty well. My reaction too when I first started.
Wow. So I was like, imagine if I actually know all the, have a professional guiding me to do it. So anyway, I wanted to ask you, sorry for all the talking up front, but I want you to know how special this topic is to me. How did you get into this, Nancy?
Oh my gosh. Same sort of story. Desperation, right? Nothing else was working. So and maybe we'll talk about this, right? One of the impacts of trauma is that we end up with all of these conditioned beliefs about ourselves and how we have to be in the world. And so I was holding these beliefs about, my big three were, I'm ugly, I'm fat, and I'm miserable. I don't know specifically where those came from. I was a little child. It just happened naturally. But at the core of all of that was this fundamental belief that this is not a safe world for me.
Wow.
Doesn't get any more core than that. This is not a safe world for me. And so what did my brilliant little child do with that? She figured out how to make it safe. So she became a people pleaser. She became a perfectionist. And good grief, did she become smart? Because being smart was being safe. And so that worked for me. Like I was a very important person.
Yeah. And this resonates so much with me, and I'm sure so many members of this audience.
It's so true, right? My mother said to me once, bless her soul, she's long gone now, but she said, you've got 13 different letters after your name, but you have no common sense.
Ooh.
I know, zinger, right? So that's the kind of sort of deficit of connection and all those beautiful human qualities of acceptance and compassion and all of those things that lead to these early conditioned beliefs. So there I am. I'm being important in the world. I have an MBA, I'm making tons of money. It's like, okay, I'm award after award after award. And then stuff, can I say shit? Am I allowed to say that?
Yes, you can say it.
Shit happened in my life. I lost the most important person in my life, my favorite aunt. I became pregnant after 7 years of infertility treatment. I had the baby and then thought, being super person, I would go back to work within weeks. And started having panic attacks. Like my body started rebelling to all of this stuff. And literally, hell happened. I lost everything. I lost the job, the career, because I couldn't function anymore. The brain fog, the headache, the whole confusion, the anxiety. So I lost my health. I lost my relationship of 24 years.
Mm.
And like, how does this happen to a perfect person?
You
And
worked so hard to be perfect.
I worked so hard and I was so empty inside, so scared that people would find out the truth about me. I couldn't cover it up anymore. My body wouldn't let me. And so I stayed in that hell for a good year. I had one constant headache. It never went away. Was nothing I could do. It was excruciating 24/7. It was there. Such helplessness and hopelessness. 13 different doctors.
Wow.
I'm looking for the magic thing. What's going to take all this pain away? It's got to be there. It's got to be something external to
No
me.
one can tell you, huh?
No one could tell me. And then I was watching television and a woman came on a show and she said, I help people with headaches. I didn't care what she did. I was
Sold.
going. Yeah, totally. Like this little tiny spark of hope and possibilities. And so I went 3 hours away, 3 hour drive away. And turned out she's a body worker. It's like, I didn't even know I had a body. Like I thought it was literally just there to hold my head up because I was just so highly intellectual. And so she put me on her table. Turned out she was doing something called structural integration, rolfing. Very, very, very deep muscle tissue massage. And I started to cry. I was 38 years old and I don't remember the last time I cried because I had it all together. But I cried and I cried and I cried. And I realized it's like there's something to this body. There's something about addressing the body, inviting the body into this experience of mine. So it's like, oh, okay. So I continued on my path. She referred me to a therapist, a really bizarre therapist. He was a Buddhist gestaltist. Now, this was like 35 years ago. That was
I've never
not
heard
in
of a
favor.
gestaltist. Is that German?
It is. It's a form of therapy that does a lot of parts work, sort of back and forth. And I went to his office the first time. I'm full of shame. It's like, good girls don't do therapy. Like good girls don't have these kind of issues. And so I'm sitting on his couch and his first question to me is, so Nancy, who are you? And I went, hey, I got this because I had my journal there. I had my pen. I can answer this question. So I rhymed off my resume.
All your letters.
Totally.
And all the letters I have.
And he looked at me and he just started to clap. Great. Now, who are you? Blew my mind. You mean I'm not these accomplishments? I'm not this? And so that was like the next sort of an opening to something way beyond what I had been exposed to in my life. So I had the body piece. I had this mind piece coming from therapy. And then I'm watching television again because it was the only thing I could do. And another woman comes on and she says she's a spiritual therapist. What's that? I've no frame of reference. I'd been dragged to church for 18 years every single Sunday. So I got out of that as soon as I could. But I had spirituality. I don't know what that is. But I went to see her. And this woman, I show up at the door of her office. She looks at me and she says, oh, Nancy, your heart chakra is green. You're healing. It's like, it was good thing I was in enough pain that I kept on going into the office because I thought she was like wacko.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're green. I don't know what a chakra is. And so that was the opening to the spirituality piece. So I had the body piece, the mind piece, the spirituality piece. I entered into this beautiful program she and her psychologist colleagues were offering called Love and Forgiveness Therapy. It was such a risk. It was so scary for me. It's like I'm sitting on the couch, feeling a little better. I'm trying to decide now, which way am I going to go? Do I want to go to this love and forgiveness scary thing? Or do I want to go back and do another graduate degree?
This is very profound. I see it all laid out in front of you now. Wow.
Exactly.
It's kind of like, are you going to choose the new Nancy? Are you going to choose the old Nancy?
That's right. I was listening to one of your podcasts, and one of the lines you said, it was like, oh, we were going to have such a good conversation because you said something about moving toward an authentic self,
Mm,
right? And I recognized I was not being my authentic self. I was
right.
performing and I was getting rewards for that, but I was getting further and further and further away from who I truly am.
And I think that again is going to resonate so well with me and this audience, because as we leave these relationships or marriages, so often I hear, I
Yeah,
didn't know who I was anymore. I mean, I hear it all the time.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
you can't answer that question when somebody says, "Who are you?"
No,
You're deer in the headlights.
absolutely. But so frozen, I didn't even know I didn't know. Like I thought I had it all figured out, right?
Yeah.
So then
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I graduate from the therapy certification program and I open my therapy business and my clients are all happy. And it's like, yeah, this is all going really, really well. And then about 7 years in, two things happened. Number one, I started to get sick again.
Mm.
And I did a little research and I got information about how many therapists are managing chronic disease situations,
Oh, specifically therapists. Interesting.
right?
Yeah.
And then the other awareness was, my clients are getting the results they're asking for, but then they're coming back with another problem.
Ooh.
So let's say a woman comes in and she says, I want to lose 50 pounds. And I
Okay.
go, okay. And we start work. And she loses some weight. And then she comes in and starts talking about relationship. And I'm going, what is going on here? This is not making any sense.
Mm.
And so there was something else I wasn't getting. And so I sort of sat with that question, what's missing here for me?
How are
And
these all
that's
related? Yeah.
how's what's going on here? What's the connection? And that's when I got the invitation to go to this weirdo, wacky thing called Emotional Freedom Techniques Tapping Workshop. I have no idea to this day why I went. How they got that email? Like this is 1995. I don't think we were even doing email back
I
then.
love these stories because they're those things that you look back in life and you're like, wow, something really is guiding us or making us go do things that we never like. What am I even doing here? And then it all works
Exactly.
out.
And it all works out. So I go, and there's 6 people in the room, and I think 5 of them were friends of the presenter. And I had, again, traveled hours to get to this thing. And so then it starts, and this facilitator person starts tapping on his face. I'm going, "Get me out of here." But my Scottish heritage comes into play because I had paid for the workshop.
Yeah.
So I was not going to leave.
Yep. You got to get your money's worth one way or the other.
Exactly. And so then I had an experience. And for me, it was an experience around my mother who had passed many years before by this point. And as her comment about my common sense sort of points towards, she and I had a very conflictual, not very warm and supportive relationship. Now I understand she had enormous traumas of her own. But it was like in that moment with this silly, crazy tapping thing,
Mhm.
I had an experience of deep compassion for my mother that I had never, ever experienced. And I couldn't write it off because I'd had the experience.
Yeah.
Now, pretty tough back in 1995. There was no research at all to support this. It's like
No.
nobody was doing it. I'm in Canada, and I think I was the only person in Canada who was actually doing that. But I couldn't discount it. It was like this energy piece was what tied everything together.
Hmm.
Yes, we have a mind. Yes, we have a body. Yes, we are spiritual beings, but we are energy at our core. And so EFT tapping gave me a way to work at the deepest core level of being human. And that's made all the difference.
That is so amazing. In my journey, Nancy, recently, and when I say recently, the last few years, I have become so hyper focused on energy
Good.
and looking at it from a little bit different angles from you because my journey's different, right? And so I got
Exactly.
there via a different path, but it is the answer to a lot of the questions.
It sure is. How can it not be?
How can it not be?
Right?
And
Everything is
I'm
energy.
everything. I mean, I literally listen to 2 to 3 hours of podcasts every day, everything from scientists to, to people that have just been through. And so I mentioned this because if you have any inkling to go and just do your own research on health issues and depression or anxiety or whatnot and energy, please go. But anyway, I want to continue our conversation. And thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah.
And so we've mentioned sort of the common term tapping. Can you tell us then, can you go into what it is?
At what level shall we have this conversation?
I know.
There's so much to say.
There is so much to say. And I'm thinking, but you're the guest, you're the expert here. I'm thinking, the thing that stands out to me are the sort of pressure points and why you tap in those areas and what is it you're looking for, what kind of relief that it's providing.
Okay, great. Yes, beautiful. So at its core foundational level, tapping is where we're going to take our own 2 fingers and we are going to tap gently, not very hard, on 9 different acupressure points on our face and upper body. Socially acceptable points,
Yeah.
easily acceptable point. And that's what it is. Now, the energy piece is that we're energy being. We live in an energy world. We are constantly taking in energy information, 4 billion bits of information per second. That's how complex we are. So we are literally reading the energetic field, the energetic consciousness, if you will. And all of that information is coming into our body and it's received energetically. Okay. Is at what we're currently calling the neuroceptive level because it's below the level of consciousness. So
Neuroceptive level.
neuroceptive level, right?
Got it.
So we're neurologically receiving this information, but it's not being understood consciously. There's a few more layers that have to go through. So that information is going to be processed in the energy system of the body, what's called the subtle energy system of the body, which unbelievably enough, we actually have evidence now that it exists.
Oh, there's lots of evidence. And that's why I'm listening to hours and hours of this every day. I'm a very science-based person. I studied chemistry and biology in college. And the first time, which was only a few years ago, it's so elementary. And yet at the same time, it's mind-blowing. Someone said, your body is made up of your organ systems, right? Skeletal, digestive, respiratory. Those are made up of different organs. The organs are made up of different tissues. The tissues are made up of different proteins. The proteins are made up of different molecules. The molecules are made up of atoms. What are atoms? They're protons, which are positive charge, electrons, which are negative charge. What's holding them together? Electromagnetic energy. You are literally made up of atoms that are positive and negative, and electromagnetic energy is holding them together. 99.99999% energy. Point all those zeros, 1% matter.
Energy, absolutely.
And it's
absolutely
the most elementary chemist will tell you that.
Exactly. And like you, I graduated in chemistry and mathematics. So I came to this with that sort of an orientation, but at some level it did make sense to me as you're talking about. So what we're doing with these acupressure points, and of course, other cultures beyond ours have known this for thousands of years and brought this wisdom into their techniques. And now here we are in the Western world, finally catching up and doing
We're like, oh, guess what we figured out? And everyone's like, welcome to the party.
Exactly. So the founder of Emotional Freedom Techniques, his name is Gary Craig, and I just want to give him a shout out because I think it's important to honor
awesome.
people.
I love, give me names. I love researching. Go ahead. Okay.
Totally. So Gary Craig.
Okay.
And he was an investment person, made his fortune in investment stuff, but he was really a self-help, passionate person. And so he spent tons and tons and tons of money studying this. So he went off and studied with a fellow named Roger Callahan, who was a doctor and had done a lot of work in these energy channels of the body. Gary Craig learns all of this. He's an engineer by trade. So he's thinking about, how do I make this a logical sort of a progression? And so he takes the complexity of all of this that he had been learning, and he creates one protocol 9 points repeated over and over and over again. Doesn't matter what the issue is, we use the same protocol.
Okay.
Simple, easy to teach, easy to use, always accessible. You don't have to, leave a meeting and do a downward dog for 20 minutes, much as I love yoga, right?
Mm,
This
right?
is something which is right there, no equipment needed. So we tap on these acupressure points. Now, we were talking about how all of this energy information gets introduced into the body subconsciously,
Mhm.
begins to be processed through all these energy channels, gets transformed into emotion.
Mm.
Emotion is just energy
Yes.
in
Just
motion.
the energetic language of the
Exactly.
body. Yeah.
Exactly. It gets translated into sensations. Now, some of this starts to come up into the level of consciousness. And then we go into meaning. We make sense of it. We tell ourselves a story about it.
Hmm.
And that's the level of consciousness.
Okay.
And then, based on that story, we're now going to choose behaviors around how to be safe in the world, how to be acceptable, how, all of those kind of things that we were talking about. So, my journey has been this sort of step by step, holistic. Oh my gosh, what does it actually mean to be a human being?
Mm.
It's not just about talking. That's only one fairly distant channel of experience from what the true human experience is.
Yeah.
And so, what EFT has allowed me to do is to hold myself, first and foremost, and other people in the mind channel, the thinking channel, but also the emotional channel of experience, the sensation in the body, the imagery that comes up for us as humans, and the behaviors that we choose to undertake. So, it's this whole human package. And when we hold a human being in the energy of love and acceptance of who they are in this moment, then we have neuroceptive safe. Then that human being feels safe, feels seen, feels comforted. And the way we are built is when we feel safe, we grow.
Mm.
When we feel safe, we feel the impulses to grow in the direction that we were created to grow in.
Another way I look at that, and tell me if I'm off or this is just a totally different tangent. It's that fight or flight for this audience that we constantly live in. And
Absolutely.
you're right, we don't feel safe because legal hearings are coming at us,
Oh,
attorneys are coming at us, our exes are coming at us, they've picked up all the post-separation abuse tools coming at us. And
yeah.
you're right, it's not safe. And
It's
when you if you and when you can get to any moments of feeling safety, you're right. Now your brain can think. Now that's,
yes.
the stress level, the fight or flight comes down. Now you can get creative. You can grow.
Yeah, absolutely. So then, yeah, let's look at nervous system and the biology of a human being. Pretty recent stuff we've got going here. It's
Okay.
called polyvagal theory
Okay.
and created by a clinician, therapist, researcher, Stephen Porges is his name. And he has taught us that we are created to survive first and foremost. And therefore, we are constantly scanning our environment, 4 billion bits of information in our environment, to see if we're safe. Literally, 4 times per second, we're asking the question, am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? Subconsciously. Now, if the answer comes back yes, then our whole body softens, we relax, all the parts of our brain integrate, connect, start to communicate with each other, which is where, as you say, the clarity comes from, right?
Yeah.
However, if there is a threat perceived, and it doesn't matter if it's a physical threat or if it's an emotional threat, psychological threat, all the threats that you're talking about, doesn't matter. When there is a threat perceived, then we are built to defend ourselves with fight or flight.
Yeah.
Yay, us. Thank goodness.
We're, yes, a highly tuned, engineered machine
It's
that's built to
amazing.
survive. Like you said, it is amazing.
Exactly. However, with the kind of threats that the community here is dealing with, there is no fight or flight ability to escape.
Yeah.
That's the challenge.
Yeah. Running from your house doesn't make you safer.
No,
No, turning
so
your
many.
email off doesn't make you safer. You have to read it at some time. Like, you're right, right.
That's
So
right.
then I always say, like, when your brain can't figure out an answer, then it just really starts running on a loop.
That's right. Yeah, it starts to ruminate because that's sympathetic overactivation, right, of this fight flight system. And it will rev up. It's, well, then I'll just think harder. I'll
Yeah.
think faster, right? It's like, especially in the middle of the night, that's when I'll really be able to
Oh,
figure
I'll
this out,
hyper
right?
focus. Yes,
Oh,
yes. I'll
yeah,
create all kinds of scenarios that probably are totally not possible. Just in
absolutely.
case. Just in case.
Exactly, but it's all designed for safety, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That these parts of us have figured out, "Oh, this is how we're gonna survive this, so
Yeah.
we'll just do this more and more." And then the other thing that happens when we can't fight our way out or flight our way out, we are designed with an even stronger defense system, which is called the freeze
Hmm.
response, dorsal activation. And this is where our very survival is at risk. And so we shut everything down. We literally withdraw, we freeze, we go numb, we go empty. We're literally in a position of helplessness that is never going to end from our perspective. So, one of the things I began to understand is as a therapist, I have to be able to assess where that particular nervous system is and fine tune my interventions to where it is and what it needs. I can't just do some beautiful modality technique to everybody,
Okay.
right? I literally have to be able to titrate, to sort out what does safety mean? What does that nervous system mean at this point in time? And it's one of the things I love about EFT is that it allows me to do that fine tuning. There are ways that I can use EFT for people who are in that freeze response that are different from when people are in the sympathetic fight or flight
Can you talk more
response.
about that? What's the difference? What do they do?
Oh my gosh. So if somebody's in this dorsal freeze response, there's no capacity there to process information.
Right.
They're they're overwhelmed. It's like my dear Mac computer, right? If I open too many tabs at the same time, I get like the wheel of death.
You
So
stole my example. I use
I
that one all the time. No, oh my God, I even say wheel of death. Okay, so I
exactly.
use this example all the time. It's true.
It's true. And so what is the worst thing I can do? Open another tab, hit
Yeah.
another key. Like what's going to happen? It's going to make the problem worse.
Hmm.
And that's what we do in traditional coaching and therapy. We make the problem worse because we're asking them to do something. We're asking them questions. We're asking them to process information when they've already had it way past overwhelm.
Interesting.
Right. And that
Yeah.
I love EFT for this population because it doesn't require them to do anything. We can just tap on
And
these 9 acupressure points, nothing else, no
that's what
words,
I found.
nothing
That's
else.
what I found. And like you said, the ease and the simplicity of it, I did it in my car on the
Yeah,
way to the courthouse.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
somebody that's in that deep freeze, that it's helpful in that way, I understand it. Then how else do you use it with someone who's in sort of a different state?
Well, this is the approach that I've developed called conscious EFT
Oh, good. I was going to ask
because
you
it
about this anyway. I saw this
and
on your website, which,
yeah.
by the
Oh,
way, everyone, NEFTTI.com. Okay. Sorry. I'll say
beautiful.
that again at the end.
Nefty.com. And it's just a sort of a beautiful story of how this all unfolded. So I've been doing tapping since 1995 and using it on myself first. And it's like, oh my gosh, what's happening here? This is wild. And then eventually bringing it into my work with my psychotherapy clients. And it's like, okay, now we're really getting somewhere. And then in 2012, I'm a teacher. I've always been a teacher. Right. I started my first school when I was 4. And so I'm sitting in my living room. It's 2012, Sunday afternoon. The sun is shining in the living room. And down comes this idea from nowhere, supposedly, which says, start a school. And it even gave me the name. It said it's called Nefty. Because like I didn't even know what Nefty stood for. And then the other message was,
Wow.
dream big, which made me recognize the impact. If I can help one practitioner learn how to bring conscious EFT to their clients, and then that person can bring it to their children or their family or their clients and help this entire world to start moving to our authentic self.
Mm.
What if we then have the clarity to solve these big problems that would
Wow.
fade, right?
It's amazing. And so would you go just really sort of high level tease out again then the conscious EFT
Yeah.
versus
Okay. Yes. So this has been my evolution as I have been guided forward to integrate the body, the mind, the spirit, and the energy piece and sort out how does this all come together in a way which respects the current state of a client's nervous system. So I created what I call the client capacity continuum,
client
which
capacity continuum.
yeah, which or the CCC for short,
Yep.
which helps practitioners assess where or say how much capacity a person has in this moment in time.
Okay.
Okay. So we have people on the left hand side of this scale who are in that big freeze response, who have no processing capacity at all, who are simply overwhelmed by the way life is currently showing up for them. So then I created EFT interventions and protocols to support those people without asking them to process information.
Ah, love it.
Okay. Now, as those people are held with safety, with acceptance, what happens to that system is you start to see little sparks of growth, of hope, of inspiration, organization, of movement toward something new. And so you support the sparks, right? You come in
Yes.
and you basically say, "Hey, nervous system, I see you sparking. That's good. I
So good.
see you. I see you." And so the system will start to spark more and spark more and spark more. And as those sparks come, what happens is that the person comes out of that dorsal freeze response. They'll come into the sympathetic fight or flight, right? But we'll support that. We'll start channeling that in the direction of positive growth. How do you want to use all this energy that's coming to you? And what happens is that the person begins to feel safer inside, greater trust, greater connection with themselves.
Coming from within.
That's right, right? The greater level of organization, clarity, calmness, curiosity, connection, all of this starts to come inside. And as that happens, the person then feels stronger, starts to take more and more actions toward creating a life that truly fits them. And then as they continue to move over to the right-hand side of this client capacity continuum, now we
Wow.
open to divine. Now we open to who we truly are.
Next level.
Next level.
That's amazing. And one thing I've noticed about myself, and I kind of put this on other people, but my interpretation sometimes of what we're going through is our complete feeling of the lack of control. And
Yes.
so I love hearing you talk about this work and how it affects people from inside, from the inside out, because then they have the ultimate control over their situation and their happiness and their future because all of these external forces have been coming at them and external and lack of control.
That's right.
And that is just beautiful, Nancy. That makes so much sense to me.
Oh, thank you. It just makes a lot of sense to me too. Brings all these different threads, right? There is no separation in this universe. Everything is connected. And so I knew there had to be a way that all of this learning I'd had the privilege to be exposed to came together in ways that support the very essence of the wisdom of human biology, of humanness, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love this. The talk about control is so right on because on this left-hand side of this continuum, there is no internal control. And so it's these desperate attempts to control the external environment.
Yes.
Whatever that looks like.
Desperate attempts, because it's the only obvious thing we see that maybe we can get a handle on, but usually we can't. And
We can't.
Again, especially in this post-separation abuse phase that this audience is often in. And I love that image of you getting that download. I had one recently, and I love looking at all these modalities and everyone's perspective that's been through a very difficult time on how they got to where they are. And so all of us out there, talking about what worked for us or what our downloads were, I love it because whether you help one person, I help one person, or we help a million,
Yeah,
somebody's out there that's
absolutely.
going to resonate with it. And the one thing that, again, it was so simple, it's almost stupid, but really dawned on me is I'm very fascinated with neuroplasticity, which I'm sure the EFT completely
Mhm.
affects, right?
Yep,
Rewiring the brain, pruning back
absolutely.
those bad pathways with the bad
Absolutely.
memories that evoke the bad emotions.
Yeah,
And when we've been in these abusive relationships so long, and then the abuse continues using other tools
right.
during the divorce and after, that controller has basically spent a lot of time and energy rewiring your brain.
Yes,
And
activating parts of the brain that are physically present.
yes.
Yes,
And we
yes.
don't realize that's what they're doing. And I know we've used terms like brainwash, et cetera, but it is a very methodical, long term game they're playing to rewire your brain. Because what happens is, even when you
Yeah,
leave the relationship, all they have to do is trigger you. And it's like they have a remote control.
absolutely.
You're living in a different house, you've got a new boyfriend or girlfriend, you're
Yep,
trying to get on with your life, and they can just send one email
that's right.
and
That's
send
right.
you back. And so
Yeah.
I am so passionate about teaching others, whatever modality it is. And that's why I wanted to talk about the EFT, help to get you to build yourself from within and to help rewire your brain. There's a scientific
Oh,
way, proof that you can help
yeah.
yourself and blow up their remote control.
I remember a time when I was doing my own separation and divorce and all the angst of it, and I'm driving somewhere with my then husband, and I was feeling pretty darn good, and then he said or did something, and all of a sudden, I'm in a shambles, I'm in shame and all kinds of stuff, and I just remember squeaking out, "You've burst my balloon. You burst my balloon," and my image was I had these red balloons I was holding, this
Right.
whole bouquet of red balloons, and it was like I saw that he had the big pin and he was bursting my balloons, and it wasn't, it took me quite a while, step by step by step, to understand that I was actually the one that had the pin.
Mm,
That's the neuroplasticity piece, right?
yeah.
And I can actually change my very structure and functioning of my biology such that I am not burstable.
Yes, exactly. You can build your coat of armor,
Powerful.
and starting, with your own brain. And that's what really grabbed me, is when I started to see the science, and there, many, many, many studies now.
Yeah.
And I just want to run out and shout to the world in this audience, we have control. We have, we have tools. Oh my gosh, we can stop this. We can, because I get that question so often. Jackie, when is this going to stop? When am I going to stop feeling like this when I open my email? When am I going to
Right,
stop? The
right.
court is demanding that I communicate with this person on these
Oh,
parental
yeah,
apps, and I'm legally trapped in this
yeah,
situation. How do I make it stop? And that's why I want to talk about these tools. There are
yeah.
tools.
There absolutely are tools, and there are frameworks now because this is so possible. It is so doable, and the reality is it takes attention, it takes focus, it takes repetition, right?
Oh,
As you were so brilliantly saying, right? These neural pathways that get activated, every time they get activated, they get strengthened. And so we do the neuroplasticity piece to start getting other neurons to shake hands together.
yes.
Hello, hey, do you want to form a connection? Oh, this is a connection that says something like, I'm a powerful person in my world, or something, right?